So I was in the middle of making this other video debuting my obsession with Animorphs by analyzing Michael Grant's Twitter account, looking for signs of an Animorphs comeback, and, well, I guess that video's trash now. It is official, Scholastic is reviving Animorphs, and they're making a movie. I'm very conflicted about this. I have been waiting for an Animorphs revival for years. I think it's the perfect IP to return to, pick it up, brush off the dust, and make a proper reboot out of it. But among the list of things that I wanted, a movie was pretty much last. I'm not really sure anybody was asking for an Animorphs movie. If you're unfamiliar, Animorphs was a middle grade young adult book series from the 90s about a group of 5 kids who are given the ability to morph into any animal they touch. They are given this ability to morph as a weapon to fight against a covert alien invasion by these sort of body-snatching creatures called the Yeerks. It came at the tail end of the era of monthly book series that were really popular in the 90s and 80s, like things like Boxcar Children, Babysitter's Club, Goosebumps, and I think Animorphs was probably the last hurrah of the format before Harry Potter came along and redefined middle grade and YA.
You spoiled everything!
The series spans 64 books. 64 books. How they are going to do such a massive series justice with a movie is exactly why nobody asked for a movie. But here we are. That's what we're going to get, so let's roll with it and hope for the best. It says that Scholastic is partnering with Eric Feig, I think that's how you say his last name, and his Picture Start banner for the first feature film. Notice that word first. Picture Start is a brand new studio that just launched in 2019, so we don't have a whole lot to go on yet. They are working on a prequel of Grease called Summer Loving, a movie based on the American Girl books and dolls, Point Fear, a teen horror anthology based on R.L. Stine's Point horror books, among other things. Their past projects kind of confuse me a little bit because it says that they launched in 2019, but they claim to have had a hand in making A Simple Favor, La La Land, The Hunger Games, Twilight, Divergent, but it doesn't really say how they were involved, so I don't know. We'll see. I'm just glad that I don't see Goosebumps on this list of achievements. All right, Mr. Fagan, Picture Start, you're going to do Animorphs. Here's my list of demands. Number 1, make it a reboot. I don't actually think that a direct adaptation is necessary and would actually work against the series in movie format. If they stick to the main arc of the books, cut out all the filler, we're still looking at like 6 movies minimum. How do you do that? Is the whole first movie just the first book, the invasion? How do you shuffle around all of those plots into cohesive films? I think that it would be better to just kind of cherry pick the elements that work the best and do more of a reboot. Keep the characters, the overall core concept, maintain the themes, but pretty much trash the outline and progression and start from scratch. I know that breaks our brains trying to process, but look, comic books do it all the time. Think Spider-Man, Batman Begins, all the different flavors of Superman. It works for comic books just fine. Keep the characters the same. Tobias still gets trapped as a hawk. Marco's mom is still Visser 1. Jake's brother is still a controller. Just rearrange the pieces and take a different journey. And use the opportunity to improve areas where the series suffered. Cut out the filler, make a more cohesive story. Maybe push for more inclusiveness. I remember Michael Grant, who, by the way, is the co-author of the series, has said on Twitter that Marco was actually bisexual, and they always regretted that they couldn't be more queer inclusive. In a 2010 Ask Me Anything on Richard's Animorphs forum, K.A. Applegate and Michael Grant said, the closest we got in Animorphs was Axe, who was, in his human morph, a combination of male and female DNA. That was a sort of veiled thing, but beyond tweaking people's sensibilities, we never went anywhere with it. So no, we never did have an openly gay character in Animorphs. It's a shame. We don't know whether Scholastic would have had a problem with it or not, and of course sex was way, way off the table with Annie, so in some ways it was irrelevant. But we could have done it, we should have, but we didn't. They went on to say, we could have made a small contribution to that, but we didn't. Not our proudest moment. I think that it would be great to see those aspects explored. Of course, if we get somebody that doesn't really understand or appreciate the material, we could end up with something like Artemis Fowl or, God forbid, the Dark Tower movie. The key thing is to make sure whoever is writing this, whoever is directing this, understands what made the series great. Or just do the first book word for word, hope it ends up wildly popular, and continue on as a TV show like you should have done in the first place. Number 2, decide who your audience is and commit to it. There are 2 potential audiences for Animorphs. The kids who grew up with it are all in their 30s now, so you could pitch it for them, or you could try targeting a new generation. Whichever they choose here will radically change the end product. The thing is, they've already tried to pitch Animorphs to a new generation, and it did not work. The re-release of the books with the lenticular covers completely flopped. They only made it to 7 books in print. The 8th book only made it to ebook. I don't think it's going to happen. There is no established market there. I promise you, 0 kids are reading Animorphs. I worked at a used bookstore, and I tried my damnedest to sling those things at kids, but they just were not interested. They thought the flip book was kind of cool, but they didn't want to read them. The only people who bought those Animorphs books were people in their 30s who remembered them fondly. So I might be a bit biased, but to me it seems obvious that they should target the original demographic that grew up on those books. And that brings me to demands number 3 and number 4. Play for the nostalgia angle and don't water it down. You know what people in their 30s are watching these days? Things like Stranger Things, It, I'm Not Okay with This. Funny how all of those things are just going around proving that you can have a kid-led cast in something that appeals to adults. All 3 of them play up the nostalgia, albeit 80s nostalgia, but none of them shy away from the grit or the gore or heavy subject matter in their storytelling. And that is extremely important with Animorphs. If you talk to any fan of those books, they will not shut up about how gruesome and dark those books were. One of our earliest memories of the series is of an innocent-looking cheerleader girl losing a limb in Morph and then picking up her lost limb and bludgeoning her enemies to death. And then she goes off into this existential crisis wondering if she's turned into a sociopath because she had so much fun doing it. That is what we want to see. Whoever is behind this needs to understand that Animorphs is a story about child soldiers being traumatized and enduring PTSD. It is not a cool superhero romp where kids get to turn into cute animals. That's what Nickelodeon tried to do, and they failed miserably with that TV show.
Yes, and I should be especially proud, since I'm the man. Oh, Rachel!
Sorry.
Sorry. Okay?
Sorry.
Funny? Yeah. Whatever.
Ugh. And again, I want to point out the nostalgia factor of those things that I mentioned earlier. I think the worst thing that they did with the lenticular re-release of Animorphs was try to modernize it. They got rid of all of the 90s pop culture references and brought it to the current day. Animorphs works best as a period piece, in my opinion. Make this the Stranger Things of the 90s. Keep all the pop culture references and just drive us millennials wild. This is what we want. Please, please, for the love of God, do not make this a Goosebumps or Jumanji movie, please. And I keep reiterating to choose your audience and stick to it, because waffling around and falling kind of in the middle of the two is another road to failure. Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark is one of those films. It was hard to tell who that movie was for. Visually, it was very disturbing, but in tone, it felt very much like a children's adventure movie, so kids thought it was too scary. Adults were kind of left cold by the story, and the scares weren't really enough to get under their skin, and it was just kind of a flop for both audiences. Pick your audience and commit. Is this for kids? It will probably look a lot like Goosebumps and I'll hate it. Is it for adults that were fans when they were kids? Go there and go all the way. Did you hear me? Let us summarize. Make it a reboot. Let it be gay. Pick your audience, which is me, and commit to it all the way. Play up the nostalgia and keep it in the 90s. Don't shy away from the gore or PTSD. Let it be the messed up thing that it is. I'm not really that attached to the story going exactly the way that it did in the books. I don't even mind if they age up the kids a little bit to get a little bit more of an emotional range out of them. That's fine. I don't want them to nix things like the Elemist or the Krayak or anything like that, but maybe not in the first movie. We'll get to there. I'm nervous about this, excited about it, and a little bit sad because I feel like things like Hork-Bajir Chronicles, Andalite Chronicles are just not going to happen unless it's massively popular and we end up with some giant franchise, which I just don't see happening. In the meantime, I will have a review of the Animorphs audiobooks coming up, and I am currently rereading the whole series, so be sure to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss it. Please leave me a comment down below. Let me know what you think of all of this. What are your expectations? What's your personal list of demands? I'm Germ, this is GermTube, and I will catch you next time.